about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
Back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. So a few primaries happened yesterday. Multiple states, including California, Iowa, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota held primary elections. But most eyes were on what was going on in California, which was very, very interesting. Not surprising. I think we expected this shift, but we don't have all the results in, but we currently have in the governor's race, Republican Steve Hilton leading. Now, with the primary in California, they have what they call a jungle primary, where you don't have a separate Republican primary and a separate Democrat primary. It's the top two contenders get to move forward, unless, of course, somebody gains 50% of the vote. So right now where we are is Steve Hilton with 57.5% of the votes in. And of course, this could change. For those of you that don't listen to my show live, obviously the results might be different. But for those listening right now, Steve Hilton has 27.8% of the vote, leading and surpassing Javier Becerra, who has 1.2 million votes or 25.4%. Tom Steyer is coming in third with under a million votes at 19.6%. So they're still expecting another 3.6 million votes to come in. And so things can change. But the fact that you have a Republican leading is a pretty good sign that the blueness of California and the squashing of there being bipartisan voices is a possibility. Will Steve Hilton win the general election? We'll see. But if he maintains this lead, he will definitely get to advance to the next race. Looking at LA Mayor, Karen Bass has already been able to advance. Now, she only has 34.8% of the vote, but being under 50%, it doesn't mean she's the shoo-in. However, if you have two candidates not getting 50%, those two get to then advance to the general election in November. Spencer Pratt is coming in very safely second. So right now, according to NBC News, there's 172,000 votes in for Karen Bass, 151,000 for Spencer Pratt. Nitya Raman, 110,000. She's bringing in 22% of the votes. Spencer Pratt's at 30%. And Karen Bass is at 35%. So 63.1% of the votes are in, and it's looking pretty good that it would be a Karen Bass, Spencer Pratt runoff in November, or a fight in November. One thing we're being told with California is don't expect results the day of, or today even, or in the near future, because they have to deal with all the mail-in ballots. Which really, to me, is we have to do something with that. The election day is election day. People vote, the polls close, you count the votes, and the mail-in ballots of those individuals who needed to vote by proxy, whether they had a disability, whether they were overseas, are usually just a handful, few thousand. They need to be turned in by the date. Can't be done after the election. They have to be received by then. And it's very easy to do that. And I don't understand why we've let this go, especially since COVID is not a pandemic, like it was 6 years ago. And I still question why we didn't dress rehearsal this. In 2020, we decided to put off the Olympics because we weren't ready because of COVID. Then why did we not also reevaluate how to do an election with integrity? And They're like, oh, the mail-in ballots will be fine. So we're being told that we might not know results for a while because they have to go through the mail-in ballots. Oh, that's so much room for fraud, especially since we've been told that some of these mail-in ballot containers were burned and people were throwing incendiary devices in them to burn the ballots. Pretty frightening. People were watching the Iowa Republican primary for governor. Representative Randy Feenstra, who I believe Trump backed, very, very narrowly lost to businessman Zach Lund, and Zach Lund is able to now move forward. People are saying, "Oh yeah, they rejected President Donald Trump's endorsement. It was a late endorsement. It was razor thin margins." Listen, endorsements by presidents, yes, they help. Especially Donald Trump's endorsement has helped, and I know he's waited, until he could vet and because an endorsement's a big deal. But does that mean people are souring on Trump? We have to, just as a country, whether you're Democrat or Republican, understand that 2026, 2027, 2028 are going to be very, very different than 2016, than 2024. And so the Republicans are going to have to eventually figure out a way to move on from Trump. For Vance to run for president and be successful, he's going to have to, again, push for common sense. What got Trump reelected? Well, common sense. Okay, we're not going to have open borders. No other country does. We're going to make sure we vet people coming in. We're going to ensure public safety. We're going to strengthen our economy. We're going to ensure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. I mean, just some common sense type things. And the more what's going to happen is the liberal media is going to say, oh, you see, it's Trump 202 or Trump, if the Republican Party is going to start going towards more common sense, eventually they're going to have to not, say this is a like a encore of Trump, even though Trump is very, very popular. It's the Republican Party is going to have to remold, and I think we're starting to see that with even Spencer Pratt saying, "Look, I'm just going to I'm the look around candidate. Just look around you." So it's interesting to see how they do. 1-877 Doc Dolly.
Hi, everyone. Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis here from Legal Help Center. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up, because we have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. You can find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. The call is free, the consultation is free, and you can speak with a live agent right now. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident of any kind, call now to find out if you have a case and how much you could potentially get.
Thanks, Vernon. You heard it, folks. If you've been injured, call and find out how much you qualify for. Call 800-679-0800. That's 800-679-0800. 800-679-0800. Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states. Not available in California.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
We're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So this is a very, very frightening video. I don't know if you saw. There was a teenager in Great Britain who was apparently stabbed. And he was stabbed by a suspect, Vikram Digwa, allegedly, who, when police came to the scene, Vikram Digwa claimed that the 18-year-old student was racist to him. So the police in this video start handcuffing the student. And the student says, I was stabbed. And the police officer is like, I don't think you were, mate. And the kid is saying, I can't breathe. Well, he ends up passing out and dying. And now there's huge, huge uproar because the police basically, one, arrested the wrong person. The one that got stabbed believed that, it was all about, him saying something racist. He didn't get medical or EMS called immediately. And he died being handcuffed. And the family is pretty upset. BBC's Lucy Manning, Hampshire Police Chief Constable Alex Boone, according to BBC's Lucy Manning, said the police force is sorry for handcuffing and arresting Henry Novak. They say, I really feel for the family of Henry at this time, understands their point of view and why they are upset with the police. Now, Alexis Boone said they respond to very difficult, unpredictable situations, and that an investigation by the police watchdog will aim to understand what they did and why they did it. Now, the officers involved have not been suspended, but are not currently on frontline duties, according to BBC. One of the four have left the force, but they said not in relation to the incident. And so the big concern that people have is if somebody stabs you or hurts you, and then they turn around and say, well, yeah, because you were, I think the Vikram Digwa was wearing a head covering, and I believe he said that the student was, I guess, insulting his ethnicity and his head dress, and I believe he said that in a scuffle, the headdress was torn off. The problem is there's from what I understand, we don't have much evidence. We only have the body cam from the police, and you hear him. He was stabbed. I think he was also stabbed in the face, and then we end up watching his final moments. And so a concern that people have is if somebody hurts you, police come up, they say, well, you said this. Immediately, you're guilty until proven innocent. And National Chief Police Council is reviewing their anti-racism guidance. They say Downing Street says the language should change. And Keir Starmer, Prime Minister, said that the scenes were disgraceful. He says he has a son, and watching something like this upset him. But then again, I think this happened last December. So we're only hearing about this now. And so now it's all over, and people are feeling that because of what happened to George Floyd, this is now affecting the way police work is done in other countries. Yeah, this happened last December. Now, the killer was sentenced to life with a minimum of 21 years in prison. Vikram Digwa, 23 years old, who's Sikh, reported to the police that he was the victim of a racist attack. And so officers arrived on the scene. This happened in Southampton, appeared to take his word. The court, however, has determined that Digwa lied about being a victim of racism. And so these police, and mind you, God bless our first responders. I mean, I see what my local police have to do. It's not easy. But what our officers are trained to do, and it should be this way across the globe, is if they evaluate if there is a medical emergency. I understand people lie all the time to the police. I do. Ma'am, do you know how fast you were driving? Oh, the speed limit. I lie to police officers all the time. Which, by the way, whenever a police officer stops you and they say, do you know why I stopped you? Don't say I was speeding, because now that could be used against you as evidence. You say, I don't know. I really don't know. Until you read your Miranda rights, they could use any of that. Well, actually, not entirely. They can't. Yeah. But if you admit to speeding to the officer on camera, they got you. So I always say, honestly, I really do. Is it because you wanted to meet me because you know I support the police so much? No, that's not why we pulled you over, ma'am. Sadly, going back to this tragic case, we have a lot of work to do in terms of, one, ensuring that we don't have racism in medicine, law enforcement, etc., but also to not call it racism when it isn't. A lot of back and forth on what happened with George Floyd. George Floyd should have never died. But sadly, when you look at the video of him, he had, where police went wrong is he was having a medical event and they didn't believe him. When he was kicking out of the police car, the officers tried to put him in the police car and he said, I can't breathe. And he kicked himself out of the police car. He said, I can't breathe. That's a medical issue. Now, it looks like they did call the paramedics, but to restrain him, unfortunately, Derek Chauvin used his knee, which was something that, unfortunately, officers were trained to do for restraint. But if you're having somebody with a medical emergency, being in the prone position is not helpful, especially if it's limiting, their ability to breathe. Now, they said that he didn't die of strangulation. He had multiple issues, including some of the previous drug use. But as a medical professional, somebody having a medical event, we don't want them on their stomach. Unless, of course, we're oxygenating them because of COVID, and that's something we did to use part of the lungs that were, not being used in the supine position. So George Floyd had a medical event. I know there was riots and protests saying it was because the cops were racist, even though one of the cops was black as well. But, I look at the situation as the police officers involved should have recognized that it was a medical emergency, and that's difficult because they didn't go to medical school. We can't expect them to know the same amount of medical knowledge that the average doctor or ER doctor knows. However, if they recognized it was a medical emergency, they might not have put him in the prone position or put the knee on his neck. However, this has now become a barometer of, okay, we need to, or a tool to now revamp how we approach arrests. And officers are so afraid of going to jail or getting arrested or being fired for perceived racism that they play it safe, saying, all right, I believe the suspect. And meanwhile, this kid dies. It's something's got to change. And I'm hearing people interviewed on this. They said, the wokeness, it's actually causing death. Look, I get officers' jobs are difficult, but the medical emergency comes first. And what's also interesting is I told you when I was an ER doc, somebody comes in, I had to perform emergency care on him. We open up his shirt. He's got a big swastika on his chest. I didn't hesitate at all. I continued to give them medical care. And so we are seeing biases then by the police. It's almost as if, this person was racist And now he's telling us he was stabbed. They hesitated. Now, I don't, want people to be racist at all, but as a doctor, it's your job to stabilize them and then determine if they're Nazi and all that. If it even, and so if this happens again, people who are sadly victims could be really up a creek if the other person claims that it was all because of discrimination. 1-877 Doc Dolly. Don't go away.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I don't like rumors. I don't like conspiracy theories. But this was a very, very interesting development in science. And even Snopes looked into it going, okay, this is true. Apparently there were some researchers at Western Michigan University that had written a paper in bioethics as it pertains to meat eaters and alpha-gal syndrome, which is spread by the Lone Star tick, which actually it's can induce an allergy and alpha-gal syndrome in somebody who eats meat if they get bit by this tick. Remember we talked about this very life-threatening meat allergy that some people could get, which frightens me because I love meat. And apparently they had said, look, it might be morally obligatory to engineer ticks that propagate this if we find it immoral for individuals to be eating so much meat. Now, I'll read to you a summary or an abstract from this paper. But I know I did a double take going, okay, no. We are not going to do anything in science to hurt people. But this is exactly what I predicted we're going to eventually see with AI, where you pose to them a problem. Like, what do we do about food poverty? What do we do about us not having enough food or cattle shortage? And AI may say, well, why don't you make people allergic to eating meat so they eat less meat? I hate to think, humans are also thinking the same thing, but I'll give credit where credit's due. But let me recap here what's going on. So this is a philosophy paper called Bioethics. And the paper was not necessarily a policy recommendation, but a quote unquote philosophical exercise. And, there's been many researchers trying to figure out how do we address the Lone Star tick population, which is increasing cases of alpha-gal. And we'll talk about that in a second. And so the authors say the following. All right, now this comes from Bioethics. The article is called Beneficial Blood Sucking. And they say that the bite of the Lone Star tick spreads alpha-gal syndrome, a condition whose only effect is the creation of a severe but non-fatal red meat allergy. They say public health departments warn against Lone Star ticks and AGS, and scientists are working to develop an inoculation to this. Herein, we argue, this is what they said, and this is Parker Crutchfield and Blake Harris. All right. They argue that if eating meat is morally impermissible, then efforts to prevent the spread of tick-borne AGS are also morally impermissible. Okay. That's frightening. After explaining the symptoms of AGS and how they are transmitted via ticks, we argue that tick-borne AGS is a moral bioenhancer if and when it motivates people to stop eating meat. We then defend what we call the convergence argument. If X-ing prevents the world from becoming a significantly worse place, doesn't violate anyone's rights, and promotes virtuous action or character, then X-ing, which is just a random act, is strongly pro tanto, obligatory. Promoting tick-borne AGS satisfies each of these conditions. Therefore, promoting, this is what they're saying, okay? I'm not lying. I'm reading this to you guys. This is ridiculous. They say, therefore, promoting tick-borne AGS is strongly pro tanto, obligatory. I got a pro tanto for you. It is presently feasible to genetically edit the disease-carrying capacity of ticks. If this practice can be applied to ticks carrying AGS, then promoting the proliferation of tick-borne AGS is morally obligatory. You have people in the sciences that are advocating killing meat eaters. I'm a meat eater. Are you flipping kidding me? Really? Because you don't think my eating meat is morally obligatory? What else are they going to think is not morally obligatory? Sex and having children? Well, what you're doing is you're causing climate change with your babies. And you're going to increase world poverty and the food crisis and world hunger because you're having babies. So you're going to infect me with something to sterilize me? Where do they get off being moral obligatory experts? I mean, this is shock. And this I think was back in July of 2025. Parker Crutchfield is from the Department of Medical Ethics, Humanities, and Law, West Michigan University Homer Stryker MD School of Medicine in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Blake Harris is of the Department of Medical Ethics, Humanities, and Law, Western Michigan University Homer Stryker MD School of Medicine. I'm kind of blown away by this. Alpha-gal syndrome is potentially life-threatening. If you get bit, it triggers your immune system. It's a molecule called galactose alpha-1,3 galactose. So that's what alpha-gal is, because it's hard to say galactose alpha-1,3 galactose. It's naturally produced by the bodies of most mammals, but not in people. It's found in the saliva or spit of some ticks, hence it's foreign to us. When a tick bites, it could transfer this alpha-gal from its saliva into a person's blood. Remember the suck-blow mechanism we talked about, where they have to give you an anesthetic, otherwise you feel it on you. This way they take time to feed, because as soon as you feel it, you're going to flick it off. So they have to blow before they suck. They have to blow the anesthetic into you before they feed. And in that process, that's how you could get this alpha-gal. The body that is used to this alpha-gal treats it like allergic reaction. 110,000 suspected cases have been identified between 2010 and 2022, and we think they're going up. In fact, the actual number they think could be close to 500,000. And so healthcare providers, if they think you're allergic to it, recommend you avoid red meat like beef, pork, lamb, venison, rabbit, dairy products. Even some medications could unfortunately put you at risk. The black-legged tick, or a western black-legged tick, they call the Lone Star tick, and the Lone Star tick are the ones associated with this. And so we could identify it and we could test you for this. But unfortunately, an allergic reaction could cause anaphylaxis, shortness of breath, and death. So we're looking at these researchers who don't want you to eat meat. Now, mind you, I respect our vegetarians and I respect our vegans. I think that's very, very cool. And I do love animals. And I adopt animals and I care for animals. And I understand that being a carnivore or an omnivore, I'm sorry, we humans are omnivores because we eat plants and animals. I understand being that. A plant has to die to hurt us. And an animal has to die to feed us. And, plants, I don't eat a lot of vegetables. I try to. But the reason why is our plants produce oxygen. If I'm trying to help the climate, there's an argument to not be picking the vegetables and eating them and let them continue to do photosynthesis and produce more oxygen. I mean, you see where we could take this conversation, and we could. I mean, listen, I'm not proud of the fact that I eat meat, but I don't deserve to be put into anaphylaxis. And in public health, we are not supposed to advocate hurting. And I understand they're not making this as a recommendation. I don't know how this paper got through without the media finding it. Now everybody's talking about it. But it's disgusting to think that our fellow humans feel that they are morally obligatory judges and that they want to advocate for pain and suffering of other fellow humans. They have no business in their jobs. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up. Because we have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. We'll help you find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. If you were hurt in a car accident, truck accident, motorcycle accident, rideshare accident, slip and fall, or any other type of accident, call our 24/7 hotline now and let us help you find out how much your case is potentially worth. Call 800-978-6800. That's 800-978-6800. 800-978-6800. I'm Gina Hart, here with spokesman Jack Mercer. So Jack, tell our listeners who should give us a call right now.
Well, Gina, first off, thank you for having me join you here in the studio. It's always great to answer the listeners' questions. Now, as far as who should call in, anyone who's been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, give us a call right now. The call is free, the consultation is free, and with our no-fee guarantee, you pay nothing unless we win you money.
That's great advice. Thanks, Jack. And is it true that the Legal Help Center is open 24/7?
That's right, Gina. We're open anytime you need us, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident of any kind, call now and let us help you find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-978-6800. That's 800-978-6800. 800-978-6800. Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. Not available in California. May not be available in all states.
Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. Well, schools have changed. They're really different from when I went to school. And I went to 12 schools, and I was in multiple school districts. So I got to kind of witness a lot of the way things were. And it was very interesting how in a couple of the school districts, they spanked. Whew, I would get a spanking. I got a dunce cap. I think I was just at the tail end of the dunce cap days where the teacher would publicly humiliate you by saying you need to sit in the dunce cap. I got in trouble a lot, not because of bad grades. I got very good grades, but I was class clown. And, I didn't have the looks. I couldn't get boys' attention. And I had crushes on boys early on. And so I remember in the first grade, I had 3 boyfriends. First grade. And I remember kissing Billy on the lips. I didn't like it because he was very slobbery. And I don't know why I was I was not a hoochie mom. I just for some reason really liked hanging out with boys, and I just liked kissing boys. And but to get boys' attention, I wasn't that cute like some of these other kids. And so I would get their attention by comedy. And when you make the whole room laugh, the boy turns around to see who just made me laugh. And it worked for me for many years. And so I would get in trouble for these one-liners, jokes, and, helping the boys cheat. Like, oh, I need help. Can I look off your paper? Of course you can. Right? So I made sure I was really smart. So I would attract these boys to want to copy off my paper. So I got myself into trouble a lot. And, they would spank us. I would lose recess. Didn't do a lot of detention. And I found that fascinating because everybody and their mother seemed to get detention, but I didn't get detention a lot. And I think the reason why is they thought I would disrupt the detention. I did have to clean the chalkboards. I had to write, I will not disrupt the class like 100 times, which, by the way, I think is an excellent punishment. Not on the chalkboard, because I don't know how much chalk I breathed in. Although I really do miss the feel of chalk, how smooth that was. A nice, new, crisp stalk of chalk. But then it would crack and break. And then the eraser making it go away. I love chalkboards. Dry erase is cool, but nothing like you need to dig that chalk into the chalkboard. But I think really good punishments in school wasn't the spanking. The spanking was ridiculous. Dolly, come up here, time for your spanking. And then you're giggling, right? And then everybody's like, oh man, she has to get spanked. You got to sit there and that was ridiculous that would happen. But I would always think it was funny because, the spankings and the whoopings and the belt I would get at home was nothing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like getting cotton candy for free. I mean, compared to, what you got at home. So it was ridiculous. But the effective punishments, I think, were, okay, you need to write this out 1,000 times. I will not disrupt the class. I will not interrupt the teacher. I will not say foul language. Did it work? No, I still do say foul language, but it's productive. There's some productiveness with that. Well, nowadays teachers are they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. If they punish one child and not punish another, they could be accused of discrimination. If they try to restrain somebody that's hurting another child, they could also get into trouble. If they do try to call out somebody, they could be accused of public humiliation. And it's the guidelines now are kind of varied between schools. And I get, as a parent, you don't want your child singled out. You don't want your child bullied. And I've had teachers where they just didn't like me. They just didn't like me for one reason or another. But I'm not going to guess as to why. But you could guess there's probably a few reasons. But they just didn't like me. Probably a big part of it is because I would interrupt them in class and I was funnier than they were. But, there's ways that you could address those. And now teachers are unsure what to do. If somebody's not paying attention to you and they're on their phone, do they take the phone away? Or are the parents going to be mad that you took away that child's mode of communication? Do they have you skip recess? A lot of parents don't like kids skipping recess. They want kids getting the physical activity. They think recess helps their attention and mood. They don't want their kid not having recess and being stuck in a room and not being able to socialize with other kids. I remember, parents would say, you go to bed without any supper. Now, I hated my mom's cooking. And every night I would get in trouble because I didn't want to eat my mom's cooking. I begged for that rule to be in my house. You go to bed without any supper, because I would have loved to leave and not eat. But unfortunately, I had to sit there and eat her food, and I mean, I'm sorry, I love my mom, but she was a horrible cook, and I really didn't like her cooking at all. And so, but we don't do that anymore because we want to make sure they eat. And so, where do teachers go in terms of disciplining kids? Now, I taught Sunday school. I've taught younger kids. I taught medical students. With medical students, I would do some old school. I remember, just lecturing, and one of the guys was talking with another one on his laptop. I go, "What you got there? You want to share it with us? Looks a little bit more interesting than what I'm talking about up here." And he said, "Yeah, I'm putting some bets down on the up game." And I go, "Oh, wait, what are the odds?" And then, oh, okay, you know what? You have a pass. Then we had another student who fell asleep. I'd wake him up. I'm like, "Are you with us? Wake up. You got to learn this stuff." And maybe people didn't like that, but that's all I had to do. And they knew not to fall asleep in my class. Right? Of course, what am I lecturing on that put them to sleep? But a lot of people had jobs. I mean, I worked in medical school, so I get that. But, there's a way to do it and still promote respect. If somebody's not listening, you could talk to them and say, "Look, what I want to make sure you get this information." And I understand, because I didn't pay attention in class also. Well, I have ADD and the Americans with Disabilities Act protects me. And I go, "Look, I'm not doing anything to you. You're good. But, you're not in trouble. But your test scores aren't that good. And so what do I do? What do you need from me to help ensure that you pass and you do well on these tests, especially if I can't keep your attention in class?" And so you work with them. And I put a lot of after hours in with my teaching. It wasn't, okay, 3 p.m., I'm out of here. People were in my office till 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. Students would call me on the weekends. I would review their stuff on the weekends, their homework, their assignments, just because that just, I just really loved my students. I had 180 of them. It's a lot of students, but I wanted to make sure they succeeded. And I did that because I don't think the regular protocols are the way to go. And if you're teaching grade school, if you're teaching middle school, I mean, I taught fourth grade Sunday school. Fourth graders are fun because they start getting sassy. They got some comedic timing. But I had to draw a fine line because I thought one of the parents was going to, really kind of, spank the kid. And so I didn't want to always call the parent. So I had to handle some things on my own. But I don't think the schools really kind of have it down yet as to what the best way to discipline a child is. They need to work on that. 1-877-Doc-Dolly.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by financial fitness show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.